He never agreed to that date.
What?
The pen was already in Ethan Cole's hand when Leah Morgan leaned between the two wine glasses and said 6 words that could get her fired. He never agreed to that date. Ethan did not look up immediately. Across the private dining table, Matthias Vogel waited with one hand beside a thick contract folder. His attorney sat quietly to his left. To Ethan's right was Julian Mercer, Redbridge Mobility's Vice President of International Partnerships. Still wearing the easy smile he had carried through almost 2 hours of negotiation, that smile was what made Leah certain. Not the German, not yet. The smile. Julian had just told Ethan that Matthias had confirmed an August production date for Koenig Systems's first shipment of thermal control units. But Matthias had not said August. He had said October. Twice. Leah straightened before anyone else noticed she had spoken. Her black banquet vest suddenly felt too tight. At the far end of the private room, Raphael Cruz, the Langford Hotel's banquet manager, was checking the dessert service. Before the guests arrived, he had given the staff unusually clear instructions. Private corporate dinner. Do not interrupt. Do not join the conversation. Do not answer questions unless they concern service. And, above all, do not become part of the meeting. Leah had spent almost a year becoming exceptionally good at that. Invisible when necessary, efficient when noticed. Tonight she had just failed at both. Ethan slowly lowered the pen. What did you say? His voice was quiet. Leah looked toward Julian. His smile vanished for less than a second, then returned. Mr. Cole, Julian said. I think she was asking whether Herr Vogel wanted more wine. Leah felt something cold move through her. That was not misunderstanding. Julian had heard her perfectly. Ethan turned toward Leah. She had served him at several Redbridge dinners before. He remembered faces better than most executives who passed through the Langford, but she doubted he knew her name. Tonight, her badge was partly hidden beneath the edge of her vest. What did you mean? He asked. Leah could still retreat, apologize, say she misunderstood, pour the wine, disappear. She needed this job. Not symbolically. Not because the hotel was part of some inspirational chapter in her life. She needed the direct deposit every second Friday. She needed predictable hours. She needed the stability she had finally rebuilt after years of not knowing what came next. Her old career had disappeared slowly, first through restructuring, then through time, then through the kind of employment gap that became harder to explain every year it grew. The Langford had hired her without asking why somebody with 15 years in manufacturing had spent several years outside the industry. They needed banquet staff. She needed work. Simple, reliable. Now she was about to interfere in a multi-million-dollar negotiation between people who could probably spend her annual salary on legal review without noticing. Leah placed the wine bottle carefully on the side station. Mr. Vogel did not agree to August. Julian leaned back. Do you speak German? Enough to know what month, he said. Matthias looked between them. He understood something had changed, though Ethan's question had not been translated. Julian laughed softly. Ethan, technical German is full of constructions that sound literal but aren't. Herr Vogel was explaining the ramp schedule. I summarized the commercial position. Leah looked at him. He said the first production qualified units would not leave Stuttgart before the second week of October. The German attorney stopped writing. Matthias looked directly at Leah. Julian's voice lost some warmth. That is not what he said. Leah felt Raphael watching from the other side of the room. She knew that look. Stop. Now, Ethan looked at Matthias. Then Julian. Ask him again. Julian's jaw tightened. I already did. Ask him again. Julian turned toward Matthias and spoke in German. His German was excellent, far better than Leah's. His accent was polished enough that she had doubted herself for the first half hour of dinner. But the sentence Julian gave Matthias was not Ethan's question. Instead of asking him to repeat the production date, Julian asked whether Koenig remained comfortable with the overall implementation schedule. Matthias answered carefully. Prototype units could potentially ship earlier. Production-qualified units could not leave Germany before October because the redesigned compressor housing still required endurance validation. Julian turned toward Ethan. He confirms the August commitment remains achievable. Leah stopped breathing. Ethan's expression barely changed. Leah. She stared at him. He had read her badge. What did he say? Julian moved first. Ethan. Ethan raised one hand. Julian stopped. Leah looked at Matthias, then Ethan. He said, prototypes may be available earlier. Production-qualified units will not leave Germany before October because the compressor housing still needs endurance validation. Ethan did not blink. Julian's face hardened. She is not qualified to interpret a technical negotiation. I didn't ask if she was qualified. Ethan picked up the pen. For one terrible second, Leah thought he intended to sign. Instead, he laid it horizontally across the contract. Then he said, Julian, tell Matthias this exactly. Julian waited. Tell him Redbridge can work with October production if Koenig extends North American service inventory from 18 months to 24. Leah understood enough German to know what happened next. Julian did not mention October. He did not mention 24 months. He told Matthias that Redbridge required confirmation of the existing August schedule before service terms could be discussed. Matthias frowned. Leah looked at Ethan. Ethan was already watching her. She gave the smallest shake of her head. That was enough. Ethan closed the contract. Naomi. The woman seated 2 places down looked up. Naomi Chen was Redbridge Mobility's general counsel. She had spent most of dinner reading every document that moved near her and speaking only when necessary. Yes? Do we still have access to Kessler and Rowe's interpreting service? Naomi glanced at Julian. We do. Call them. Julian sat forward. This is absurd. Ethan ignored him. Video is fine. I want someone certified for German commercial negotiations. Naomi took out her phone. Matthias said something quietly to his attorney. Julian reached toward the contract. Ethan placed one hand over it. No. Julian froze. I was going to clarify. No. Nothing in Ethan's voice was loud. That made everyone hear him. We are pausing until I know what was actually said. Matthias watched them. Ethan turned toward Leah. Can you tell him that? Leah hesitated. I can tell him the meeting is paused. And the contract? I should not interpret the contract. For the first time all evening, Naomi looked at Leah with genuine interest. Ethan nodded. Good. Julian stared at him. Ethan continued. Tell Matthias only that nothing will be signed until we have an independent interpreter. Leah faced Matthias. Her German was slower than Julian's, less polished. She had to search for one word. But Matthias understood. The meeting was paused. A certified interpreter was joining remotely. No signature would happen until both sides confirmed that they understood the same terms. Something in Matthias' face relaxed. He answered. Leah translated the simple part. He says thank you. The certified interpreter joined 18 minutes later.
He never agreed to that date.
What?
Dr. Sabine Keller appeared on a large monitor hotel staff, rolled in from the conference floor. Naomi explained the situation carefully. No accusation, no drama, only a request to reconstruct the disputed points. Sabine asked Matthias to repeat the production schedule. She translated: production qualified units, October. Prototype units, potentially August. Endurance validation, incomplete. Service inventory, negotiable. Then Naomi opened the delivery exhibit. First production shipment. August 18. Ethan looked at Julian. When was this changed? Julian folded his hands. The schedule has evolved. Naomi opened her laptop. There's a version history. Julian said nothing. The August date had been inserted 11 days earlier by Julian Mercer. The change note read, per supplier, confirmation. Matthias read Sabine's German translation of the note. His response was immediate. He had never confirmed August production. Naomi turned several pages. The warranty exhibit revealed a second discrepancy. Koenig had agreed to cover manufacturing defects in the thermal control modules. The Red Bridge draft required Koenig to cover downstream damage across the full cooling assembly. Julian had described the broader language internally as accepted. Matthias said it had not been. Ethan leaned back. What else? Nobody answered. He looked at Julian. What else did you tell us they accepted? Julian's composure finally cracked. This is how international negotiations work. Positions move. Language moves. Nobody puts every objection into an executive summary. Naomi said, changing prototype to production qualified is not summarizing. You weren't in every conversation. I have the drafts. You have legal drafts. I had the commercial relationship. Matthias interrupted in German. Sabine translated. He says, Mr. Mercer repeatedly told him that Redbridge understood the October limitation. Ethan looked at Julian. Julian turned toward Matthias. Sabine stopped him. For the remainder of this session, I recommend all cross-language communication go through one channel. Julian laughed once. Nobody joined him. He stood. Are we really doing this because a banquet server overheard one sentence? Every eye moved toward Leah. It was the first time anyone in the room had turned her job into an argument against the information she had provided. Something familiar tightened in her chest. Ethan looked at Julian. No. Julian waited. We're doing this because when I tested what she told me, you changed my question. Silence. Then the independent interpreter confirmed the date. He touched the contract. Then our own version history confirmed you altered the draft. Another page. And now our supplier says you represented one position to him and another position to us. Julian looked toward Naomi. This is being blown out of proportion. Naomi closed her laptop. No, it is being documented. Julian's phone buzzed on the table. Nobody moved. Ethan said, Go home. Julian stared. You cannot be serious. I am. We have a board update tomorrow. Naomi will handle it. I built this relationship. Matthias said something in German. Sabine translated without expression. He says that appears to be precisely the problem. Julian looked at Matthias, then Ethan, then Leah. For a second, Leah saw something she recognized. Not hatred. Fear. The expression of a person who had spent too long running ahead of consequences and had just discovered the hallway ended. He took his jacket. At the door he turned. This deal is dead without me. Ethan looked toward Matthias. No deal is worth signing if only one side knows what it says. Julian left. The door closed. For several seconds, Nobody spoke. Then, Matthias looked at Leah and asked something. Sabine smiled faintly before translating. He would like to know how the banquet server knew the difference between prototype qualification and production qualification. Leah almost laughed. All evening, everyone had assumed German was the unusual part. It wasn't, because German manufacturers use the same distinction American manufacturers use. Sabine translated. Matthias asked another question. Where did you learn that? Leah looked down at her vest. I worked in supplier operations for almost 16 years. Ethan turned toward her. Naomi stopped typing. Leah wished immediately that she had said less. Matthias asked, Where? Midwest Transit Components. Ethan knew the name. Everyone in commercial vehicle manufacturing knew MTC. For decades, it had supplied cooling systems, door assemblies, and electrical components to transit manufacturers across North America. Then restructuring closed several facilities. Hundreds lost jobs. Ethan leaned forward. You worked at MTC? Yes. Doing what? Supplier scheduling, then sourcing coordination, then vendor integration. For 16 years? Almost. And German? We bought from 3 German plants. Matthias asked which one near Stuttgart. Leah named it in German. That surprised him. His first engineering job had been 10 kilometers away. They exchanged 2 short sentences. Not legal German, factory German. Release dates, qualification levels. The difference between what an engineer called available and what a production manager called ready. Matthias laughed. Sabine did too. Ethan did not. He was studying Leah. You knew exactly why that distinction mattered. Yes. Why are you working here? The question was not cruel. That almost made it worse. Leah had heard versions of it before. You seem too smart for this. You used to do what? How did you end up here? As if a life only moved downward when somebody made a mistake. Leah looked directly at Ethan. I work here because they hired me. Naomi lowered her eyes, possibly to hide a smile. Ethan understood the boundary. He nodded. Fair. Matthias proposed that the negotiation end for the evening and resume after both legal teams reviewed every clause with independent language support. Ethan agreed immediately. No bargaining, no effort to save face. The unsigned contract went into Naomi's case. Matthias shook Ethan's hand, then Naomi's. Then he turned toward Leah. He did not deliver a speech. He simply said in English, Good ears. Leah smiled. Long memory. He understood enough to laugh. After the German delegation left, Ethan remained in the private room. Naomi stayed. Raphael entered. He looked at Leah. Yes, good. Then toward Ethan. She technically violated several service rules. Leah stared. Several? Fewer if I'm generous. Ethan looked concerned. Raphael held the expression 1 second longer, then shrugged. I'm feeling generous. Leah exhaled. Raphael pointed toward the service hall. Finish breakdown, then come see me. He left. Naomi began packing. Ethan stopped Leah before she lifted the used glasses. Miss Morgan. She turned. Thank you. You verified it. You noticed it. That's different. Ethan glanced toward the closed contract. Not tonight. What? Tonight, noticing it was the difference. At 11:47 p.m. After the private room had been cleared and the linen bag sent downstairs, Leah sat across from Raphael in the banquet office. He placed an incident report on the desk. You know why the rule exists. Yes, guests pay for privacy. I know. Corporate guests especially. I know. Staff cannot interrupt negotiations because they think they heard something. I know. Raphael studied her. You also understand why I'm not writing you up. Because I was right? No. She looked at him. Because you waited. Leah said nothing. You heard something odd. You kept listening. Then you heard the same problem again. You spoke when somebody was about to sign. He leaned back. That is different from inserting yourself because you wanted to be important. Leah nodded. Raphael looked at the report. How much German do you actually speak? Enough. That answer is annoying. I learned it from German people. Also annoying. She smiled. He almost did. Then, you never told me you worked manufacturing. It wasn't relevant to carrying plates. Raphael's expression changed. That is a depressing sentence. It's an accurate one. Do you miss it? Leah knew what he meant. Parts, which parts? Problems with answers. Raphael laughed. Hotels have plenty of problems. Not enough answers. That made him smile. He signed the report. No disciplinary action. Then pushed it aside. Go home. At 6 the next morning, Naomi Chen was already inside Redbridge headquarters. By 7:30, she had built a timeline. Julian had not invented one false translation during one desperate dinner. He had been changing information gradually. Not always in contracts. Mostly in the spaces between them. Internal summaries. Meeting notes. Schedule reports. Executive updates. Supplier concern became supplier discussion. October production became late summer target. Warranty rejection became language under review. Testing incomplete became final validation progressing. Each phrase could be defended. Together, they created a reality that did not exist. At 8:15, Naomi projected Julian's planned board slide. Koenig agreement ready for execution. August production confirmed. Full Wehrleitment archived. Ethan stared. He knew. Yes. Why? Naomi changed screens. Julian's compensation plan appeared. 40% of his annual performance bonus depended on closing 2 international supplier agreements before quarter end. Koenig was the larger one. October production would force Redbridge to revise its fleet rollout guidance. That would not destroy the company. It would mean an uncomfortable board meeting. Possibly a weaker quarter. Possibly a delay in Ethan's announcement of Redbridge's first major European manufacturing partnership. Julian had spent months promising none of those things would happen. Ethan leaned back. So he changed reality until it fit the presentation. Naomi shook her head. He changed the presentation and hoped reality would eventually catch up. The sentence stayed with Ethan. At 10, Julian joined by video with an employment attorney. He denied committing fraud. He did not deny changing the summaries. I was managing the negotiation. You told me production was confirmed for August. I believed we could move them. They told you October. Under current validation assumptions, and you entered August as supplier committed date. Julian's attorney interrupted. We should distinguish a fluid commercial target from formal representation. Naomi displayed the reporting system. Supplier committed date. August 18. No one spoke. By noon, Julian was suspended pending formal review. At 2, the board was informed. At 3:10, Ethan asked Naomi, "What do we know about Leah Morgan?" Naomi looked over her glasses. Why? I want to understand what happened. We know she works banquets. I know. You want me to run a background check on a hotel employee because she overheard German? Ethan stopped. No, he heard the problem in his own request. Actually, no, that sounds terrible. It does. What can we learn without invading her life? Public professional history. That It took less than 10 minutes. Leah Morgan had spent 15 years and 8 months at Midwest Transit Components. Supplier scheduler, senior sourcing coordinator, vendor integration lead. Her name appeared on old trade programs, a municipal transit procurement panel, a 2017 case study on supplier recovery. Then the record stopped. MTC closed 2 regional facilities during restructuring. Leah's position disappeared. Years later, she appeared in the Langford's banquet staff directory. Ethan stared at the dates. What happened in the middle? Naomi closed the browser. You just told me not to invade her life. He nodded. You're right. At 4:15, Matthias Vogel called from his hotel. This time, Sabine joined from the start. Matthias was willing to continue negotiations, with conditions. Independent interpretation, clause-by-clause confirmation, a realistic production schedule, direct access between operational teams rather than communication only through senior partnership staff. Ethan agreed. Then Matthias added one more condition. Sabine translated, he suggests you invite Ms. Morgan. Ethan nearly laughed. In what capacity? Operations. That surprised him, Matthias explained. Leah had not merely understood German. She had understood what German manufacturing language meant operationally. A professional interpreter translated language. A lawyer translated obligation. What the dinner lacked was somebody who understood how a factory sentence became an actual vehicle delivery commitment. Ethan looked at Naomi. Call the hotel. He stared. You call her. Leah was folding napkins in the staff locker room when her phone rang the next afternoon. Unknown number. Leah Morgan. Mrs. Morgan. Ethan Cole. Her hand stopped. What can I do for you? We're restarting the Koenig negotiations next Tuesday. I'm glad. They requested independent interpretation. Good. And they requested you. Leah said nothing, not as an interpreter. Also good. I thought you might say that. I'm not certified. I know. I'm not current enough to advise on the whole contract either. That is not what Matthias asked for. Leah leaned against the locker. What did he ask for? Someone who understands supplier operations. For a moment, she could smell machine oil, old factory coffee, forklifts, radios, the warm metal smell of a manufacturing floor at the end of shift. A life she had not spoken aloud in years. Ethan continued. We would pay you for the time. Formal consulting agreement. Naomi can send it before you decide. No, a pause. Ethan did not sound offended. Can I ask why? I haven't worked supplier integration in years. You recognized a qualification issue during dinner. That doesn't mean I can walk into your company and pretend nothing has changed. I'm not asking you to. It sounds like you are. Silence, then. That's fair. Leah almost apologized. She didn't. Ethan asked, what would make the request reasonable? She had not expected that. A limited scope. Okay. No authority to negotiate. Fine. I review operational assumptions only. Agreed. I don't translate. Agreed. And when I don't know something, I say I don't know. I would prefer that. One meeting. One meeting. Send the agreement. I will. Before hanging up, Ethan said, for what it's worth, I'm not asking because you rescued the dinner. Leah waited. I'm asking because after warning me, the first thing you did was refuse to translate material you weren't qualified to translate. Leah looked down. That matters. The agreement arrived before dessert service. 3 pages, 4-hour consulting session. Supplier operation assumptions only. No interpretation responsibility, no authority to commit Redbridge. Leah read every line, twice, then signed. Tuesday morning, she entered Redbridge headquarters, wearing a navy jacket she had owned since before MTC closed. It fit differently now. Not badly, honestly. Naomi met her in the lobby. "You came, I signed a contract." Naomi smiled. "I already like you." The negotiation room was smaller than Leah expected. 8 people: Ethan, Naomi, 2 Redbridge engineers, Martin Shaw, Redbridge's supply chain director, Matthias, his operations manager, his attorney, Sabine on video. Leah sat at the end. No one introduced her as the waitress who had saved the deal. Ethan simply said, "Leah Morgan is consulting today on supplier integration assumptions." That was all. She appreciated it more than she expected. For the first hour, nobody needed her. Sabine interpreted. Lawyers reviewed liability. Engineers reviewed validation. Leah took notes. Then Matthias' operations manager explained the October schedule. The redesigned compressor housing required 1,200 endurance cycles. Testing would finish in late September. Production release followed. First shipment in October. Martin frowned. "If October is fixed, our Midwest pilot slips 8 weeks." Leah looked at his schedule. Something felt wrong. Not mathematically, operationally. She waited. Martin continued. "Our plan assumes full fleet integration begins once the production batch arrives." Leah raised one hand slightly. Ethan noticed. "Leah?" She looked toward Martin. "How many pilot vehicles need production-qualified units at the same time?" "All 40. Why?" "Because that is the fleet." "I understand." "Why do all 40 need production-qualified units before integration work begins?" Martin stopped. One engineer answered, "Consistency. For testing or revenue service. For rollout." Leah looked toward Matthias. "Can prototype units be installed in non-revenue vehicles?" Sabine translated. Matthias' operations manager answered, "Yes, 6 units in August. Possibly 8. Leah looked back at Martin. "Then the schedule is treating pilot learning and production release as the same milestone." Martin stared at his chart. "Use August prototypes for training, software integration, and maintenance procedures. Keep them out of passenger service. Production units arrive in October. Revenue deployment begins after acceptance." Martin typed. An engineer asked Matthias a question. Sabine translated. Another answer. Another calculation. The impossible 8-week delay became a 4-week change to revenue deployment, while most integration work remained intact. Martin sat back. "That works." Leah shook her head. "It might work." He looked at her. "What's the difference?" "We haven't asked maintenance." Silence. Ethan almost smiled. Martin looked less amused. "Our maintenance team knows the rollout." "Do they know they'll train on prototype hardware in August?" "No." "Then we don't know if it works," Ethan said. "Call them." Martin glanced at the clock. Now? Now. 25 minutes later, Andre Collins joined by video from a depot outside Milwaukee. Blue work shirt, grease on one sleeve. Martin explained the proposed schedule. Andre listened, then identified the problem. Technicians would need revised high-voltage lockout training before touching the German prototype units. The next scheduled training cycle was September. Leah watched Martin's face. There it was, a plan moving cleanly through a room until it reached the person who actually had to live inside it. Andre said, "We can move training. How quickly?" Ethan asked. 3 weeks if safety signs off." The schedule changed again. By lunch, the deal looked less elegant, more conservative, more real. Matthias seemed pleased. Ethan was. not because the negotiation had become easier, because for the first time in months, nobody in the room seemed afraid to make the schedule worse. At 1:18 p.m., Naomi closed the contract draft. "We're not signing today." Martin looked surprised. Ethan nodded. "Operations verification first." Matthias agreed. Leah packed her notebook. Her 4-hour agreement was finished. Ethan walked her toward the elevator. "Would you do another session?" "I thought it was one meeting." "So did I." Dangerous sentence. He smiled. "I'm learning." She pressed the elevator button. "We're reviewing how supplier information moves through Redbridge." "Good." "Naomi thinks we have a process problem." "Naomi is right. You haven't seen the process. I saw the result." The elevator arrived. Ethan said, "I want people who can tell the difference." "Between what?" "A clean report and a true one." Leah looked at him. "That isn't a job description, not yet." The doors opened. She stepped inside. "Right one." Redbridge's review lasted 3 weeks. Julian Mercer's suspension became termination. Not because of one translation. The formal review found repeated misrepresentation of supplier commitments, unauthorized modification of reporting dates, and failure to disclose material qualification risk. There were no offshore accounts, no criminal conspiracy, no secret enemy. Julian had wanted the deal closed. He wanted the bonus. He wanted the board presentation to match what he had promised. He wanted to be the executive who solved the impossible schedule. Whenever reality resisted, he improved the description. It was smaller than a conspiracy, and more believable. Because everyone understood the temptation, Ethan refused to let Redbridge reduce the failure to one dishonest employee. Naomi examined incentive structures. 4 senior commercial roles rewarded contract closure dates, but did not measure post-signing accuracy. Supplier risk reports traveled through partnership leadership before reaching executives. Operational staff rarely attended final commercial meetings. Bad news moved upward through people whose compensation improved when the news sounded better. Ethan read the findings twice. At the leadership meeting, he said, "We built a system where optimism could edit facts before facts reached the room." One executive replied, "That's a strong statement." "It should be. We shouldn't redesign the organization because of Mercer. This isn't only about Mercer." The room waited. It's about why Mercer thought he could do it repeatedly. The incentive plan changed. Supplier dates could not be altered without source documentation. Operations received independent access to qualification updates. Material cross-language negotiations required professional interpretation. Major supplier reviews included people responsible for field implementation. Not because banquet servers were secretly experts. Because information had been moving through too few people, Leah learned about the changes from Naomi Fang after her 3rd consulting session. They were sitting in a cafe across from Redbridge headquarters. Naomi slid a document across the table. "What's this?" "Something HR will send you tomorrow." Leah read the heading. "Supplier Integration Specialist." She stopped. "This is a job." "Yes. A permanent one." "Yes. I told Ethan I'm not current." The description includes a 6-month re-entry period. Leah kept reading. Vendor schedule review. Cross-functional implementation. Operations validation. Supplier risk documentation. No executive title. No magical promotion. No corner office. A real job. 1 level below the position Leah had held before MTC's restructuring. Training included. Salary good. Travel limited. She put the paper down. "Why?" Naomi sipped coffee. Because we interviewed 12 candidates. Leah looked up. You're not being offered a job because you whispered at dinner. That mattered. Martin interviewed you. Operations interviewed you. You completed the supplier case. 2 people disagreed with you during assessment. I remember. One of them recommended you strongly. Martin? Martin. Leah laughed. Naomi continued. You also said, I don't know twice. That sounds like a low bar. You would be amazed. Leah looked at the offer. What happens to my hotel job? That is between you and your hotel. I meant... I know. Naomi softened. Do not X this because it resembles something you used to be. Leah looked at her. Accept it only if it is something you want to become now. For 2 days, Leah carried the offer in her bag. She worked at technology awards, dinner, then a wedding, then a medical conference breakfast where 300 people wanted coffee at the same time. Nothing about hotel work suddenly seemed beneath her. That surprised her. When MTC first closed, Leah had assumed banquet work would last 3 months, maybe 6. Then her father fell and fractured his hip. She moved him into her apartment while he recovered. 6 months became a year. Recruiters stopped calling. Software systems changed. Her certifications aged. Job postings began listing tools she had never used. Every application required explaining a gap that grew larger every time she explained it. Eventually, the hotel became easier than applying. Then, slowly, it stopped feeling temporary at all. It became work. Real work. She liked Raphael. She liked the banquet team. She liked the clean certainty of an empty ballroom after midnight when every glass had been collected and no one needed anything else. What she missed was not status. It was the feeling she had remembered at Redbridge. A complicated problem. Different people holding different pieces. An answer that improved. Because somebody asked one more question. On Friday night, Raphael found her aligning dessert forks before a charity dinner. You're leaving. I haven't decided. You're aligning forks. I always align forks. You align them when you're thinking. That sounds invented. It is. He handed her coffee. You're still leaving. Leah stared across the ballroom. Do you know the strange part? I know many strange things. I thought if I ever got the chance to go back, I'd feel relieved. You don't? No, what do you feel? She searched for the word. Disloyal. Raphael frowned. To who? She gestured around them. This. The ballroom? The people. Raphael looked toward the service corridor. 2 banquet attendants were quietly arguing about missing vegetarian plates. Someone dropped a spoon. A bartender called for more ice. Raphael looked back at Leah. You think taking another job means this work mattered less? A little. That's insulting. She blinked. You think we hired you because we needed you to fail somewhere else first? No. Then why would leaving mean being here was failure? Leah said nothing. Raphael accidentally took back the coffee he had given her. He drank from it. That one was mine. She stared. He ignored her. You were good here. Past tense, you're annoying me. She smiled. Raphael looked toward the ballroom. Be good somewhere else. Leah accepted Redbridge's offer Monday morning. During the 6-month re-entry period, she worked 3 Redbridge days and 2 hotel shifts. It was exhausting. It was also useful. At Redbridge, she relearned systems. At the hotel, she remembered that titles changed faster than people. Some mornings, she sat with engineers. Some evenings, she carried plates past executives who never looked at her face. The contradictions stopped bothering her. Mostly. 5 weeks after the original dinner, The Koenig agreement was ready. The signing took place at Redbridge headquarters. Sabine interpreted. Naomi reviewed every clause. Matthias brought his operations manager. Martin brought Andre from maintenance. Ethan insisted. There were no speeches before the documents opened. They started with the implementation schedule. Prototype units in August. Technician training in September. Production qualified units in October. Revenue deployment after acceptance validation. Service inventory, 24 months. Warranty responsibility defined by component. No language buried inside summary slides. Every objection was recorded as an objection. Every agreement confirmed by both sides. At one point, Matthias raised a concern about winter shipping delays from Germany. Sabine translated. Martin began answering. Leah raised one hand. He stopped. She looked toward Andre. What happens if the units arrive after heavy snow? Andre thought. Receiving backs up. How badly? Worst case, 3 days. Matthias' operations manager added something. Sabine translated. Their packaging could remain outdoors for only 24 hours below a certain temperature. Naomi looked at the agreement. That's not here. Matthias' attorney checked. It wasn't. Nobody panicked. Nobody hid it. They added a receiving protocol. 20 minutes. Problem solved. At 3:42 p.m. Matthias signed. Ethan signed next. No applause. No champagne. Just 2 signatures on a contract everyone finally understood. Matthias stood. He shook Ethan's hand. Then Naomi's, then Martin's, then Andre's, finally Leah's. October, he said in English. Leah laughed. October. He pointed at her. You heard? You said it twice, 3 times. She looked at Ethan. Apparently nobody counted the first one. Ethan nodded. Fair. Matthias smiled. Then more seriously, different room now. Leah understood. He was not talking about architecture. There were different people in the room. Yes, Ethan said. Different room. For several months, things went well. Then a field report arrived at 761 rainy Tuesday morning. Object. Koenig Thermal Magi. Navy Fasher Trend. 12 Redbridge pilot buses were in controlled service trials across Milwaukee and Minneapolis. 3 had reported intermittent thermal control shutdowns. No injuries. No fire. No passengers stranded. The buses entered protective mode exactly as designed. Engineering classified the incidents. Low severity, under investigation. Leah scrolled. All 3 failures occurred after heavy rain. Bus 4107, rain overnight. Bus 4112, heavy rain during operation. Bus 4109, vehicle wash followed by rain. She stopped. Maintenance comments mentioned moisture near one connector. Not inside the module. Near it. Once dry, the fault disappeared. Leah called Andre. He answered on the 4th ring. Normal people wait until 8. You sent the report at 6:52. I'm not normal. What does the connector look like? Wet. Useful. You asked. Same location all 3 buses? Basically. Basically or yes? Pause. Yes. Any harness tension? Maybe. Why maybe? Because Koenig changed the mounting bracket. Leah sat straighter. When? Production revision. That bracket wasn't on the August prototypes. No, why change it? Vibration. The original bracket had passed integration testing. Later endurance testing in Germany found vibration near the compressor assembly. Koenig redesigned the mount before production release. The new bracket solved vibration. It also changed the wiring harness entry angle by less than 2 centimeters. 2 centimeters. Nothing an executive's schedule would notice. Leah asked Andre for photos. First, second, third. Then she saw it. In the prototype installation, the harness approached the connector almost horizontally. In the production version, it approached from slightly above. Water traveling along the harness could reach the connector seal differently. Leah called Martin. He answered, sounding half asleep. This had better involve fire. It doesn't. Then why are you calling? 3 production units faulted after rain. I read the report. Brack changed harness angle. Silence. What? Check the photos. She sent them. A minute passed. Then, oh. Leah disliked that particular oh. It usually meant somebody's morning had changed. Martin said, "We need engineering." And Koenig, "Let's confirm internally." Why? So we know what we're telling them. We already know what we're asking. We don't know the bracket caused it. I didn't say it did. Martin sighed. If we call Germany every time a technician notices something strange, nobody gets any work done. Leah looked at the clock. 7:19. What would make it worth asking them? Pattern. 3 matching failures after water exposure isn't a pattern. 3 buses isn't statistically meaningful. That depends on the failure. No bus is unsafe. We think. The protection worked. We think. Martin's voice hardened. Do you have evidence these vehicles are unsafe? No. Then stop escalating the language. Leah felt heat in her face. She forced it down. This was the difficult version of the culture Ethan had promised. Listening was easy when the answer improved the plan. Now listening cost time. Meetings, paused tests, engineers pulled from other work, an uncomfortable call to Germany. The temptation to wait. Leah opened the field report again. Could be coincidence. Seal installation. Seal variability. Software. Bracket. She called Andre. Can you prepare 1 bus for controlled water testing? With engineering authorization? I'm getting it. You are? I'm trying. He laughed. I'll prep 4107. At 8:20, Martin arrived carrying coffee and irritation. You called Andre. Yes, I said we would wait. You said call Germany later. His eyes narrowed. That is technically true, in the most annoying possible way. I prepared a domestic test. You are not engineering. I know. You cannot authorize it. I know. So why is Andre preparing the bus? So we don't waste an hour after engineering approves. Martin stared. Finally, you really liked hotel work, didn't you? Deeply. At 8:45, engineering approved a controlled spray test. They reproduced the fault in 11 minutes. Water did not enter the module. It traveled along the harness, collected near the connector interface. Normally, the seal held. Under vibration, the changed angle placed lateral pressure on it. The seal opened just enough. Protective fault. Shutdown. Martin watched the depot video. His expression changed. Called Germany. Leah said nothing. The Koenig engineer joined at 9:20. This conversation did not require translation. The engineering teams shared English. Leah still insisted the call be formally documented. The German engineer saw the bracket. His face tightened. He asked for the harness part number. Andre gave it. Then came the sentence Leah hoped she would not hear. We saw moisture once. Martin leaned closer. When? In environmental validation. What happened? No electrical fault. Was it documented? Yes. Was Redbridge told? The engineer hesitated. That hesitation entered the room before the answer. It was classified installation specific. Leah asked, which mounting revision? The engineer checked, production revision. Martin closed his eyes. What corrective action? Reading clip. Leah opened the Redbridge installation drawing. No clip. The engineer looked surprised. There should be. There wasn't. Koenig had added a small routing clip during its internal validation build. But the clip had never reached Redbridge's released North American installation package. Koenig believed Redbridge had it. Redbridge believed the bracket had been delivered exactly as validated. Nobody had lied. Nobody had manipulated language. No bonus drove the mistake. Two technical systems simply contained different versions of reality. In some ways, that was more frightening. There was no villain to remove. Ethan entered at 9:47. Naomi followed. Martin summarized 3 field faults, water exposure, harness angle, missing routing clip. Supplier had seen moisture during validation. Corrective hardware never entered Redbridge documentation. Ethan listened. How many buses have this configuration? 36. In service? 12. The rest, staged, stop release. Martin nodded, no argument. Ethan looked toward the German engineer. We need the clip specification. Within the hour. Can existing vehicles be retrofitted? Yes. How long? Minutes. Andre answered from Milwaukee, assuming the access panel cooperates. The German engineer looked confused. Leah smiled. Different problem. By noon, the fix was confirmed. By the next afternoon, every pilot vehicle had the clip. Financial impact. Small. Reputational impact. None. The issue never became public. That was what success looked like. Nothing happened. Later, Martin stopped at Leah's desk. He placed coffee beside her keyboard. This one is yours. Should I be worried? Yes. He pulled over a chair. I was wrong. Leah waited. About waiting. Yes. You can pretend this is difficult for me. It doesn't look difficult. I dislike you. She smiled. Martin looked at the report. I did exactly what we said we weren't going to do. Not exactly. I delayed an uncomfortable question because I wanted more certainty. That's normal. Doesn't make it useful. No, he thought. I saw 3 failures and thought the number was too small. You weren't irrational. You thought the pattern mattered. Yes. Why? Leah considered. Because technicians don't usually add weather to a thermal fault report unless something made them notice it. Martin looked at her. The rain wasn't automated data? No, Andre's team added it. So someone close to the equipment thought it mattered. Yes. Martin nodded slowly. Not. Technicians are always right. Not. Listen because lower status employees possess magical insight. Something simpler. When somebody close to the problem includes a detail the system does not collect, ask why. The incident changed one form at Redbridge. Every field report gained a box. Operator, technician observation, not diagnosis, not proof. Simply, what did the person closest to the problem notice? Most answers led nowhere. Some did. A driver noticed charging faults after one restart sequence. A cleaner noticed condensation beneath an electronics enclosure before a seal issue was diagnosed. A warehouse employee noticed a supplier's packaging tape had changed after production moved to a subcontractor. Nobody became famous. No secret genius reveal. People contributed pieces. Leah's 6-month re-entry period ended. Her position became permanent. She still asked too many questions. Martin wrote that in her review. She looked at him. Complaint? No, that sounded like one. That is what makes it irritating. 1 year after the original Koenig dinner, Redbridge held its supplier forum at the Langford Hotel. Leah returned as part of the host company. No black banquet vest, no tray, no dramatic transformation either. Simple charcoal jacket, notebook. Employee badge. Raphael saw her outside Ballroom B. He read the badge. Leah Morgan Suppler Ingration Redbridge Mobility, then looked at her. Terrible uniform. I agree. You want a tray? No good. We're short-staffed. She laughed. A server passed carrying water glasses. Young man, early 20s. Raphael stopped him. Marcus, this is Leah. She used to work here. Marcus glanced at her Redbridge badge. What happened? Raphael answered first. She became difficult. Leah nodded. Very. Marcus hurried away. Raphael looked toward the ballroom. You miss it? Sometimes. Which part? The end of the night. When everybody leaves, yes, that's the best part. They stood quietly. Inside the ballroom, executives and suppliers were finding their seats. Different companies, different accents, different titles, different pieces of information. Leah watched a facilities manager trying to locate his assigned table. A junior event worker pointed him in the right direction. Nobody else noticed. She thought about the first Koenig dinner, the unsigned contract, Julian's confident voice, Matthias saying October while Ethan believed he had heard August. For years, Leah had thought losing her manufacturing career meant the knowledge from that life had become useless. Then she almost made the opposite mistake. She almost believed returning to corporate work meant the years at the hotel had been wasted. They had not been. Hotel work had taught her something manufacturing had not. People reveal what they believe about you by what they are willing to say while you are standing beside them. Some people speak freely around servers because they assume servers are scenery. Some executives dismiss technicians because they think technicians only understand tools. Some professionals ignore assistants, drivers, custodians, receptionists, warehouse workers, people whose titles do not announce everything they know. But Ohio and the field failures had taught her the other half. Being overlooked does not automatically make someone correct. Experience is not proof. Authority is not proof. Confidence is not proof. A title cannot make information true, neither can the absence of one. The work was, listen, then verify. Raphael looked at his watch. I have to work, so do I. He started away, then turned. Leah, yes? You did the right thing that night. She smiled. I know, no hesitation anymore. Raphael nodded. Good. Inside Ballroom B, Ethan was preparing to open the forum. He saw Leah enter and pointed toward a chair beside Andre from maintenance. Across the aisle sat a warehouse manager. Behind them, engineering, legal, planning, finance, suppliers. No single person owned the entire answer. Ethan stepped to the microphone. A year earlier, he might have begun with growth, targets, market expansion, delivery performance. Instead, he said, before we start, I want everyone in this room to remember one rule. Leah looked up. If somebody tells you something that makes the plan less convenient, do not ask how quickly you can make the information disappear. Several people smiled. Ask whether it is true. He looked around the room. And ask who else knows something you have not thought to ask. Leah lowered her eyes. Not from embarrassment, because the sentence no longer belonged to her. That was the real change. A year earlier, truth had to depended on one banquet server breaking a rule at exactly the right second. Now the goal was to build rooms where nobody needed to risk everything just to be heard. The forum began. 20 minutes later, a German supplier raised a problem with a production schedule. The certified interpreter translated every uncomfortable word. Nobody softened it. Nobody changed the date. Nobody turned an objection into agreement. Before anyone proposed a solution, Ethan looked toward operations. What are we missing? This time, several people answered. Leah smiled. The Koenig dinner had not changed her life because a CEO discovered she was secretly more important than her uniform. It changed her life because, for 6 seconds, beside an unsigned contract, she decided that being overlooked did not remove her responsibility to speak when she knew something relevant. Everything afterward required other choices. Ethan had to verify instead of assume. Matthias had to continue negotiating. Without pretending trust had never been damaged. Redbridge had to examine a system that rewarded comfortable information. Leah had to return to work she once knew without pretending the years away had not changed her. Andre had to be heard without being treated as automatically correct. Martin had to learn that wanting more certainty could itself delay the question that created certainty. No one had been rescued by one revelation. They had simply become more careful about confusing what was convenient to believe with what was actually true. Through the open ballroom door, a server moved past, carrying a tray of water glasses. Nobody looked at him. Maybe he knew something useful. Maybe he didn't. That was not the point. The point was that if the moment came when he spoke, the people in the room should not decide whether his words were worth checking by looking at the tray in his hands. And they should not decide he was right merely because they had learned a beautiful lesson about overlooked people. They should listen, then verify. The first Koenig negotiation had nearly failed because everyone powerful at the table was looking at the contract while the person they barely noticed was listening to the words around it. For years afterward, people told the story as though the remarkable part was that a banquet server understood German. Leah knew better. The remarkable part was smaller. She had known something relevant at the exact moment a decision was being made. And instead of asking whether she was important enough to say it, she finally asked whether the information was important enough to hear. That difference had changed the room. Not forever. Rooms never changed forever. They had to be rebuilt every time new people entered them. New pressures arrived. New deadlines tightened. New incentives made bad news inconvenient. The work was never finished. Ask, listen, check, correct. Then ask again. Ethan continued the forum. A supplier disagreed. An engineer challenged him. Andre interrupted both. Naomi asked for the source document. Someone laughed. Someone admitted they did not know. Nobody apologized for that, and before the next decision was made, they checked. Leah sat back. A year earlier, the CEO had been seconds from placing his signature under a version of reality he had never actually heard. Then the person carrying the wine had leaned close enough to say, "He never agreed to that date." This time, nobody needed to whisper.